you really want to know?
I really, really want to know. I really want to know. Well, good morning.
Good morning.
And welcome back to the latest episode of the Project Failure Files, the series for anyone who manages people, projects, or processes for a living, and for those who want to know. I am Sharon Weaver, CEO of Smarter Consulting.
It's very dramatic here in people that want to know. And I'm Christian Buckley, founder of Collab Talk, and welcome to another episode of our series where Sharon and I explore management and leadership topics from the perspective of what not to do.
So in this episode, we are talking about what quality means within your organization. By not having clear measurements of what success means, organizations will experience disputes, probably a lot of rework, and consistently miss expectations.
When you think about like project status meetings and how important it is to have an agenda to stay on topic, it's equally important to restate as part of those meetings project expectations. I actually really appreciate those. I learned kind of these lessons early in my project management career, that when you're unclear on what's being asked of you and what success looks like, you need to speak up, ask the questions. It just like if you're walking out of a meeting, Sharon, and saying like, I have no idea what I was just asked to do, like you failed.
Well, yeah. And I mean, in a healthy environment, you really should be able to go back and be like, I am so sorry, but I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. And a good team member is going to come put their arms around you and say, I got you. Another thing that I might recommend is to go back and look at whatever you scoped, right? So if you have a scope of work, if you have a project scope, if you have deliverables, if you have requirements, whatever it is, go back and look at that to be crystal clear on whatever it was that you committed to, whether that's if you're a consultant and you're committing to a client, or you're working with internal users and you've committed to your internal users. Because basically it's good to understand what you've committed to so that as that project moves forward and as your discovery uncovers more and more and more things that maybe weren't mentioned at the beginning, and we get into this conversation of scope creep, then the scope is always going to need for clarification. So it's really good to understand what your baseline is and what you're trying to accomplish.
And there's nothing wrong with going back, sharing like your like mockups or drafts, the minimally viable product, asking that question. Is this what you had in mind? It's like, this is what I'm understanding. What did I get wrong? And sometimes you may go look and say, hey, this fits the scope of work. This is like my interpretation of what you asked for. And they say, now that I see it, oh, I understand. No, actually, here's what I want. But you can't, this is like a Buckleyism. I say this all the time. Like you cannot measure what is not moving forward. Meaning that if you're not attempting something, mocking it up, moving forward, like attempting to do that or asking questions, then you're going to stay in the cloud, in that fog. Things are going to be unclear. So test your assumptions, talk about it. That's an important part.
Number one. Number two. Number one. Number two. Tell me the tree images at the end of this podcast. Tell me it's going to be there.
Look at these two images. Tell me what's different. They're exactly the same.
So anyways, part of managing any project, if you're a PM, you're a leader, you're responsible for making sure it gets done in some capacity, regardless of what your actual title is to constantly review and clarify the scope. Are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? Are you solving the problem that you're trying to solve? Understand that, understand the deliverables, the outputs, whatever the expectations are, and most importantly, the success measurements and the success metrics that you have defined for this particular project.
It should be a good conversation. I know that could be as we talk about this. We live this, Sharon. This isn't just this. This is real life here. It's why it's sometimes a little sensitive. We live this experience. As with every episode, please feel free to comment throughout the episode. Share your experiences. Any great examples or feedback that we may have missed. Of course, like and subscribe as well to the channels. But let us know if there's anything we miss in your real experience with quality and success.
So many great examples I'm sure that people can give us. I'm sure there's so many ideas. All right, let's get started with some definitions.
Well, and thinking about like what quality means here. I mean, because ultimately, depending on the project, where you're a service company, a product company, or if you're somewhere in operations, you're in support, whatever the role is, how do you defining quality for this project? There's the generic ideal of high quality, but I've seen as a design student, there was a fellow student that had the presentation. He worked at a framing store. And so he would come in with like these double and triple framed foam core backing, beautifully matted designs. And they were terrible designs.
So basically he was cheating.
No. I mean, I think that the teacher gave him some good grades at first because of the presentation of it. But then I think the quality just wasn't there of the actual assignments. And the teacher started to see through that. But to go and actually have, the memory popped up there. But you can't assume that everybody understands what's done, what's good enough on that. To go and say, okay, what is the standard? What are we trying to achieve here? And if you're dealing with the customer and it's going to say like, here, if I know that my needs are met, if it has these three things, great. So then that also helps you understand what can I do to meet those expectations. Also, if it's outlined clearly, then hey, I can do better than that. I know I can exceed those expectations, because that's where you get into happy customer land, is that you've delivered what they've asked for, what they need, but then you've given them something they didn't know that they needed on top of that, in addition to that. You can't do the extra without having delivered the core.
Yes, exactly. And, quality is in the eye of the beholder, but requirements are written down on paper, right? And so, when you use the extra stuff, we kind of use the term pleaser, being that we can't please anybody if we haven't met the minimum requirements to begin with. And so I absolutely think it's really important to understand what are the agreed requirements and what does done look like, right? At what point are you, saying that you're going to accept this and say, yes, you have met the requirement that we wrote down and agreed to.
And you've mentioned scope creep a couple times, Sharon. I mean, because it's an important part of it, because the reality is that you can do your best job to define the requirements. And I know some people hate that word requirements, but you defining the scope and the output and all of those things. And then as you start to deliver based on all of that and you review it, and then people know to ask for, here's what I want, here's what I need out of this, through the lens of their understanding, is as they see it coming to reality and they realize, oh, that's not what I need. Now that I see this, my lens of understanding has expanded. What I actually need is this. And so you're like, okay, well, what fits within the scope? What is outside of the scope? And you can have those discussions. But that's an important aspect. Back in the day, if you're of a certain age, but thinking of like the waterfall method. And so Sharon, I know you lived through this as well, but everything was waterfall. And you get to the end of a 9-month, 12-month project and be like, well, that's what we wanted. Like, well, it was what you wanted a year ago, and we delivered everything you asked for.
Yep.
But because it wasn't built in all of the adjustments, you did your best, but it still was a long process. And so nowadays, people expect to have smaller set of deliverables, but more quickly, so that they can provide that feedback and modify it based on their expanded understanding. So quality could mean frequent MVP reviews.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a good point to say, because, there's multiple methodologies, and we always say, it doesn't matter which one, as long as you have one. I think another important step to that, though, is whatever your methodology is, honor the quality expectations of that methodology. So if your methodology is waterfall, for example, then you're going to define what your requirements are. You're going to complete the project, and you don't get to go back and make changes on that within, you get a certain percentage of contingency. But outside of that, you don't get another chance to go back and redesign until the project is complete. If you're using something like RAD or Agile or iterative methodologies where you have a shorter life cycle to getting back to that design, then you have an opportunity to do that, but also understand that that iterative ability to flex around it can also really truly create scope creep and cost creep and things that can come with that. And so I think, when you talk about quality, the question is, at what percentage is enough to say we're good with what we have until such a time as we can come back and redesign this for another phase? And that's a hard line for a lot of people to get to.
Yeah. Which is, again, if you've got those shorter iterations, but rapid, you go in there. So you can say, all right, we've built this functionality. We've still not worked on the interface for this. Again, we're putting it in technology terms, but, say, hey, here's what I go and deliver on this problem. The next one is to go in and finish, again, the front end, that aspect of it. Yeah. Thinking about all of this from, a cultural impact standpoint too, this is why going back to that statement of have a methodology around this just becomes part of the discussion, part of the delivery. So it's not just, I shouldn't have to ask you as the PM to think about the quality of the deliverable and the overall solution that's being brought to the client. It should be built into that. We should be asking those questions as part of our daily stand-up meetings. Like, we're going through, there's the features built. What is the customer experience around this entire project? What else could we be doing here? I know that we talk about this all the time because it's part of the culture, part of the methodology is somebody can say okay, I think we have an unhappy customer here. Here's why. And that's what can we do around that? So we have the discussion around the features, the output, what's happening, the progress on that, the budget, all of those things, which are the clinical, the tactical aspects of project management. But then we also talk about those softer topics about, is the client happy? Do they understand where we are in this process?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think culturally, we think about how we're going to do something, not what we're going to do. So from a project perspective, from a scope perspective, it's what are you going to do? From a culture perspective and a feeling perspective, it's how are you going to deliver? And is it going to meet the thing that I have in my mind as an expectation? And I think sometimes you kind of have to remember that it's multi-dimensional in nature.
Yeah, because stakeholders may feel disappointed even when the rest of the team that's working on the project believes they've delivered good work. And so there could be, again, the state, and here's a common thing, that the stakeholders think that in their mind it was going to be much further along. They don't understand some of the foundational things that need to be done, especially in the IT space, where there's a lot of the activity. The presentation layer, making it look pretty on the end, is one of the faster things that can be done. It's at the end. You got to make sure all of the functionality is there, all the hard work, the architecture, all that stuff up front. And then the whole project kind of speeds up. And so that's why, again, as part of that process, that communication that you're doing and checking in on expectations, and here's what's going on. Is this meeting your needs? Asking those kinds of questions should be part of it. Or, again, it could be an internal project and you can be asking those same questions. Like, here's what we are, how do you feel, Sharon, about it? Like the psychologist, you're laying down on the couch. Tell me about your mother, and how do you feel about the state of the project?
How does that make you feel, Christian?
But if you're moving things around, if you don't have an idea or the client doesn't have an idea, the internal or external customer, on what success looks like, part of that is then the team will get discouraged by a moving target. Okay, what are we actually delivering to? They're never, just seems like, hey, they're never going to be satisfied with whatever we deliver. without that. So let's nail that down, what this looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, and some of the ways to handle that are really to, meet with your stakeholders. It doesn't matter if they're internal, external, or otherwise. Meet with your stakeholders and redefine expectations. And sometimes, especially in the modern workspace, as things change faster than you can have a conversation around them, by the time you get somebody to agree to a decision, maybe the feature is not even working the way that it did before, right? I think there's a constant need to regroup, reset expectations, make sure you know what it is that you're all doing, everybody's on the same page, and keep moving forward. And I think there's always this kind of like, come back together, make sure we're doing the right thing, make sure we're all in agreement, then go do the work, then come back together and do it. Because I think if you're not sharing, we always talk about we're all on the same team, we're all headed to the same place, we're all trying to, do the same thing, trying to accomplish the same goal. I think if we're not all kind of sharing that same vision, then things can get really frustrating very quickly.
Well, thinking about some of the pitfalls of not defining quality, not making that part of your methodology. I mean, one of it is kind of what we were just talking about, is that having those vague requirements is like, yeah, well, we'll know when we see it what quality is. That's not a deliverable. That's not something that you can go and say, all right, we're ready to move forward on. Like no, that's a red flag.
Yeah, many years ago, I actually worked on a project many years ago. I worked on a project, and a senior leader was tasked with telling me a certain color of a certain thing. And that was their only job, was to give me a certain color for a certain piece of something on this, this design that we were doing, and everything else was finished. And I put a color in and I brought it in and we had a conversation, and they were like, no. I'm like, okay, well, do you have another color you'd like? I don't know what I want. I'm like, okay, well, can I show you a different color? They're like, yep. I said, which one? I don't care. So literally, and I am not joking, for like 2 weeks, every single day, I had another meeting with a different color. And finally, after like 8 meetings, they were like, that one. I like that one. And I'm like, okay. And it was the weirdest, it was just really kind of like the weirdest and oddest experience I had ever had, because for the most part, you sit, you meet, you make a decision, and then you do the work, and then they make sure that what they asked you to do is what you did. But in this scenario, it was, let me look at it. Nope. Let me look at it. Nope. Let me look at it. Nope. And I think that does create a lot of, I don't know, like vagueness in trying to figure out what you're trying to do.
Yeah. I think I can't speak for that experience. That's something that's special. Usually what it is like they may not vocalize the fact that they don't know exactly what they want, but like, let's move forward. That's fine. Another common scenario is just the miscommunication. It's like, again, not validating expectations. Like, ask them, it's like, is this matching your expectations? What did you expect to see? What else can we do here? Do you have a better understanding of, or has anything changed around what you thought you wanted versus what we're now showing you? Or we're still on the right path, for that. And the other side, because that's something that I think about at the end of the day, the client that's paying for that work, product, service, whatever it is, within reason, within scope, it's their project. You're there.
You're there for them.
And so, but again, within reason, without having that scope creep. I mean, the other side of it is, unwillingness to adjust standards. So when, if you as an organization, you're kind of clinging to the wrong metrics. Like, I had worked in a place where they were stuck on the performance metrics and not looking at what was actually happening with the clients. And so they were a great example, an easy one to illustrate this is in a support organization where, the time that a ticket is open, that's the key measurement. So they want to get, the volume in, of course, the quality of the solutions provided. It needs to actually answer the client's questions before tickets are closed out. But if that ticket just sits there hanging open to the metrics, it looks like nothing's happening. Well, the reality is that it could be that clarification was needed from the product team or another thing. There's a lot of reasons why that can stay open. And so to go and look at, hey, this is an unhappy customer because the metric by this metric was really long. It's like, no, they're unhappy because it didn't, whether we close the ticket after 10 minutes or 10 hours, the product ultimately wouldn't do what they wanted. That's why they were unhappy. Yep. And so sometimes you have to, again, understand, how are we measuring success here? Is that actually telling the right story of why you were successful in each of those cases?
Yep.
Yeah, I like the idea of perfectionism paralysis.
You like it?
I like the idea of identifying perfectionist paralysis. So, the teams that are in fear of missing a hidden standard or making a mistake, and so identifying, hey, are we over delivering? Are we doing too much on this? Well, then there's other costs. There's nothing wrong with, as I talked about earlier, meeting and then exceeding expectations. But when you are supposed to deliver within a reasonable time frame and you're being paid hourly or salary, but get a certain volume through, well, if you are in fear of upsetting customers, but then nothing is standardized and you're going above and beyond and delivering twice as much, I mean, it's just, that will hurt your business as well.
But I think this is the moment where people feel like they're kind of like spinning their wheels, right? It's like I feel like I'm working really, really hard, but I'm not actually accomplishing the goal. And that's when I think sometimes when you feel that way, when the definition of done or the expectations for what you're trying to do are nebulous or unclear, you're going to work really hard to do something, but not actually accomplish the thing that you're trying to do, because you never know if you've gotten there or not. And so I think that's when people kind of feel that way of, I'm working and working and working and working, but I'm not actually, I don't feel like I'm, getting to, the part where I should be, where you are happy.
Yeah. Well, thinking of some strategies for overcoming this issue of not having clear success metrics. One of the things is to do is, I mean, there's not like, oh, here's the answer and it will apply in all cases. No,
I'm leaving if you're not giving us the answer.
Well, to turn goals, like, okay, make it simple, or, we want a modern design. Like, what do those things actually mean? I know you're looking around because you've heard those exact words. But you want to turn that into something that is testable and observable, something that you can actually measure. Okay, here's what I think this means. Well, this is what we're going to do.
Right.
And then lay it out and say, okay, we're just going to have this. We're going to do this with the interface. It's going to have this clean look. We're going to change the color palette for this, redesign the interface. Boom. There it is. All right, let's move forward. Get agreement, move forward.
How many buttons would you like? What color would you like them? What words would you like on them? What pictures would you like on them? And the really great thing is that I don't mind, and I don't think anybody minds asking those questions and being clear about things, because at the end of the day, we are just trying to make people happy. We're trying to make sure they get what they want. We're trying to meet those expectations. And so I think, that granular ask, it's really kind of funny. I don't know if you've experienced this, but I feel like over the last, even decade or so, like there's been kind of this taboo about getting granular. It's like, why are you asking so many questions? Why do you want to know exactly what needs to happen? It's like,
I came to you to build this. Why are you asking me? It's like, well, wait. Yeah.
I'm just trying to clarify expectations. And I don't understand why that's become such a taboo thing, but I agree with you. I think, making sure that you understand what it is you're supposed to do is a very good thing, and making sure that you're on the same page with your stakeholder.
Yeah, I love that idea of going to each of the stakeholders, asking them what they think quality means, what they're looking for from that, and then reconciling between the various stakeholders, and do that at your next bigger meeting where all of them are there and say, okay, hey, look, if there's anything that conflicts, bring that up, have a discussion there. But the other part of that, is what I just said there. Having regular checkpoints where you're reviewing and potentially revising the definition, the scope of the project, of what quality means, and making sure that each of those constituents signs off. Each of the stakeholders says, yes, I understand the change, and yes on that change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think as long as everybody's agreeing to the same level of quality, to the same expectations, then for the most part, I find that everybody tends to be a little bit happier.
I know we love talking about best practices. Again, everybody wants it in something that is a tweetable format. I can just go down and here's the 1 through 5. Here's what you need to go and do. One of them, I would say on that list, having that shared, that definition of done, make it visible. And so this is another important thing, because, as a former project manager, doing that kind of task is that I want to know, like, when am I done? When does this end? And especially in the consulting world, when have we delivered what was paid for? Where are we now treading on project 2.0?
Yeah. What goes on to the parking lot? What goes into the next phase? What goes into the next one, as opposed to what's inside the scope of what we've already agreed to? And definition of done is it's a basic tenet in the Agile methodology, because essentially you're getting agreement from the tribe or the team that everybody knows what done means, so that when we are done, we can be done, we can celebrate it. And like you said, we can work on the next thing, the next task, the next project, the next phase, whatever it is. But I think having that shared definition of done makes a huge difference.
What else did you put on that best practices list? Anything else that stand out to you?
I definitely think not just understanding what the definition of done is, but when you're creating the requirements, when you're creating the initial scope of work, making sure that you're documenting the quality expectations around that. So, and we kind of joke, this idea of just because you have a list of things and you've checked off the list of things doesn't mean that it has met the quality of, the expectation. And so I think it's really important to say, it's one thing to say, I'm going to do this. It's another thing to really kind of define how I'm going to do it, or what is going to be a deliverable. So for example, if I write a statement of work, I might say, we're going to do a training plan, and here's the things we're going to do to get to that point. And then here's what the deliverable is going to be, right? Because I want you to understand the quality of that particular thing is, at the end of the day, this deliverable that, we're going to agree to. So I think documenting those expectations is really important.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also like the idea, I've kind of put on my list of best practices of having those as part of those stakeholder reviews, early drafts, mockups, and validating, going back and checking. So it's not just a status report, but it's like, let's go and let's show you what we have. Here's what we have. Here's the mock-up interface that we've developed off of this. Is this what you're looking for? Is this what you were thinking? So we can, to your point, like we may have executed on and built the functionality of this solution, but stepping back, looking at the whole package. Let's go back and review the expectations. Here we've built this, and this. We're missing these 2 pieces. We know we've not shown you yet on these things. Show them what you can, as much as you can, and get that additional feedback. Make any necessary tweaks to that. But here's another Buckleyism. You've heard me say it many, many times, is the more you involve people in the process, the more likely they are to support the process. And so make all of that as transparent as possible. Even if they're not happy with the result of where they are, they'll be more satisfied. They'll be satiated. That's the right word for it. Waiting for the next step, the additional features or, deliverables.
Yeah. And I think the most important best practice is to celebrate your wins. And that can mean everything from making sure that everybody knows that we're at done, so we can celebrate the completion point, all the way to, and we've talked about this in other shows, but when we talk about the retrospectives or the postmortems is, when are the times that we got on the same page? When are the times that we all said, this is what we're going to do. We did it. And we all felt good because of it, because we didn't have to rework, re-meet, review 50,000 times to get there.
Yeah. Thinking about the calls to action. I mean, the first thing I'd say, if you're a project manager, don't assume things, document it, confirm what you've written down, clarify what done looks like in every kickoff. And then as you're delivering on those iterations, again, go back. Here's our goal. This is what we're doing. Here's the things. Here's what we think we've delivered. Here's what's left to do. And that you get clarification from stakeholders in each one of those meetings. That's the way that those meetings are supposed to be used. It's nice to sit around and talk about our children, our pets, the weather, all those things. But that's an effective meeting, is when here's the goal. Here's what's been delivered to date. Here's what we're working on next. Our expectations being met.
Yeah. And you don't have to be the project manager to ask those questions. It doesn't matter if you're the stakeholder or the delivery team. I think you should be specific. I think you should ask questions. You should make sure that you understand what's happening. I think you should feel comfortable to push back on things that either aren't clear or that you don't understand. And on the flip side, if somebody is asking those questions or trying to understand it, do your best to help clarify, right? So it doesn't matter which side of the fence you're on. Again, we're all on the same team. We're trying to get this done.
I love that phrase, like same team people. When things get heated, it's probably annoying for me to use that, because I've said exactly that. I do the same team people, time, remember, take it down to temperature.
Yep.
And I'm sure that annoys people even more when people do that.
It should be a safe space. I think at the end of the day, it should be a safe space where everybody feels comfortable to say, I don't get it. I don't like it. I want it a different way. And, we should be able to just be like, all right, cool. Let's change it. Let's make it so that everybody feels like they're, part of it. And we're all just trying to solve the problem together.
Yeah. Well, that is it for this week's episode. So Sharon, a great conversation as always. Folks that have been watching this, be sure to follow us and subscribe. Recordings will be available, of course, through YouTube and out on the blog. And looking forward, we'll be back next Monday with another episode.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
And here's the point where the music comes in and funny little meme is played and everybody laughs, then we go back to work. All right.
Yay.